On this edition of Independent Sources, the graying city. A growing number of New York's elderly face more abuse at a time when funding for their protection is at an all-time low.
Cosmetic changes. An international boycott of a well-known cosmetics brand from Israel stirs controversy.
And campus cuisine. An Egyptian immigrant brings halal food to a college campus in Harlem.
Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Pierre-Pierre.
And I'm Piano Ravinka. New York City is well known for its bustling streets filled with young people seeking fame and fortune on Broadway or Wall Street. The flip side of that is the growing elderly population living in the 5 boroughs.
The last census found that the number of residents over 60 years old has grown significantly in the last 10 years. The Department of Aging says this is largely because of the first group of baby boomers who turned that age starting in 2006.
Whatever the cause, advocates for the elderly are frightened that this fast-growing population is being forgotten with dire consequences. I spoke with the director of the Public Policy Council of Senior Centers and Services, Bobby Sackman, about the sometimes silent suffering of New York's graying residents. Bobby, give us a sense of how serious the problem of elderly abuse is in the city.
There was a state study released 2 years ago that showed that for every 1 case that gets reported to some kind of authority, whether it's a legal authority, a social worker, adult protective services, 24 cases go unreported. So that means that there are 260,000 older New Yorkers suffering from elder abuse as we speak. That goes undetected. It's about 120,000 seniors here in New York City. Most of the elder abuse is financial elder abuse.
And just to elaborate a little bit on that, you're calling this issue a hidden crisis.
Yes.
Tell us more about why are we not aware of what's going on?
Elder abuse is a hidden crisis. It's happening in people's homes. Most people don't know this is going on. Sometimes they don't even know that what's going on is considered elder abuse. For example, most elder abuse is financial elder abuse, and it's perpetrated by their own family members, their adult sons or daughters, their grandchildren or other relatives or spouses. And they'll just move in and start taking over the finances of the older adult. They, like any perpetrator of any kind of abuse, they often isolate them. They don't let them have contact with other people, and then they financially take over.
So it's not necessarily care that comes into the home for the most part. It's the family, as you're saying.
It's mostly family. I mean, you'll find on occasion there'll be a home care worker, and that has happened, but really it is mostly family. And that's one of the reasons it goes unreported, because who is going to want to tell on their son, their granddaughter, their grandson, and get them in legal trouble? And sometimes the adult has nobody else to depend on. You know, this person is also caring for them. They might be 80 years old and they're frail, and they think that this person stands between them and the nursing home, and that's what that relative will always tell them. If it's not for me, you're going to a nursing home. So what choices do they have? And so it becomes a very dangerous and vulnerable situation for people.
Another form of mistreatment is emotional mistreatment.
Right.
Elaborate on that.
Well, there's psychological, which could be verbal abuse. Again, isolation. You're not letting somebody have contact with other people. Sometimes they'll keep them physically, like maybe in their bedroom and not the rest of the home. So there's also neglect. They don't give them their proper medication or nutrition or enough food. There's psychological, there's physical, there's sexual abuse that goes on, and sometimes obviously a mixture of all of those kinds of abuse. And yet if you talk to people and you ask them, do you know what elder abuse is, most people will sort of look at you a little quizzically and say, no, I don't really know what that means.
So how do the elderly report it?
Well, I mean, one way they can report it, or anybody can report an incident, is by calling 311 in the city, and they'll be connected to the Department for the Aging, which has an elder abuse unit, and then they will take it the next steps. They could also contact Adult Protective Services, which is another way that that seniors can get the attention that they need.
Does this happen at all income levels?
Yes, you can. This elder abuse does not discriminate by income. You can be really poor, middle income, and totally wealthy. In fact, you know, you might think about that somebody who has real money to take might be more vulnerable than somebody that doesn't. However, again, it's usually a family member moving in and taking your money because they don't have another way of getting money. Some of it is the economy. It's going to get worse because people don't have jobs. But very often that family member has mental illness or substance abuse. You know, there's something else going on. There are occasions where family members will take their parents' check or savings. There's plenty of stories where they sell their home and they take the proceeds. I mean, there's some horrendous stories out there, but they think it's their due. Well, this is my mother. Why should I wait for her to die and I'm in her will? You know, they justify it in their minds. And so sometimes it seems like a gray area when it is totally illegal and obviously very abusive towards the older person.
So after an elderly person reports the abuse, your program comes in, removes that perpetrator from
Well, not necessarily. Again, these are adults. They're not children. So we have an image of the domestic violence situation where, you know, perhaps somebody's husband or boyfriend is beating them up and, you know, abusing them, and they take the person away. An adult has rights. Or they're abusing a child, I should say. An adult has rights, and so they can say, I don't want to kick my child out. I don't want to kick my grandchild out. And that might seem, you know, like, why would somebody do that? Again, that might be the only person they have to depend on in the world to take care of them. You're 80 years old, you're frail, you have medical conditions, it's hard to get out of the house. Maybe you're homebound, you can't get out. This is the person you think is between you and the nursing home.
So how do
they're
you...
very complex situations,
Yeah.
they're not simple situations.
And it's very difficult for you to advise them to, or to offer them help in that.
Well, there is a trained workforce out there. There's funding that comes through New York City to the Department for the Aging for community-based elder abuse services, meaning there are some nonprofits that specialize in elder abuse. So these are social workers, some of them are lawyers, and they've learned how to work with this particular kind of situation. And although each one's individual, but they professionally have been trained. But it's only $800,000 a year that funds these programs, and every year we have to go to City Council, it's part of what's known as the budget dance, and win back the same money, and we've been fighting to win this back now for 4 years. $800,000 is a drop in the bucket in New York City for elder abuse.
How many agencies are using this 800,000?
There are five agencies across the city, and they have to cover all of New York City.
And what you're trying to do is have the city renew this money on an annual basis without the contract per se.
Right. We would like the city, i.e. this is the mayor, and we would speak to maybe the next new mayor, if this mayor doesn't do it, to what they call baseline this money. So we would like Mayor Bloomberg to baseline elder abuse funds, and that means that he keeps it in the budget of the Department for the Aging. We don't have to fight for it again. It just stays. What does that mean in reality? It means that victims of elder abuse and the social workers and other staff that work with them know that they have continuity, that no one's losing their job, that the services aren't disappearing, that they know that year after year it's there. And that's really important because these people have had enough turmoil in their lives. They don't need the city to come in and threaten the funding year after year after year. So we really hope that the mayor will see his way. It's not a lot of money. It's $800,000 in the city budget is a tiny amount of money.
And this may be more important than ever because we're dealing with an increasing elderly population.
Yeah, the fastest growing segment of New York City's population is the over 85. We need to take that in. We've never been here in history. It's true for New York State, and it's happening across the nation. The baby boomers are coming up, and so we have a burgeoning elderly population. We have huge poverty among the elderly. We have a bad economy. You know, there's like all these dynamics out there that are just going to increase the reasons that elder abuse even happens. We're already hearing of stories of a family member, you know, for example, taking FEMA money from a senior who got FEMA money because her home was, you know, devastated during Hurricane Sandy. So it's already happening. You know, it doesn't end. They think, well, it's my money. And then it gets complicated because what does the parent do if they think their daughter needs the money? But this is really all illegal, and these are people that are not they're in a powerless situation. It's somebody they trust, and that's really key. It's somebody they trust that's taking their money.
Bobby, what about the role of the banks to ensure the safety of the finances of their customers?
That's a really good question. First of all, to their credit, the banks are doing a lot already. They're training their personnel, and they have internal mechanisms if they suspect financial elder abuse. We, along with other organizations, are going to go to the state to seek legislation that would require the banks to disclose this information, but also give them liability coverage so they don't have to fear that somebody would sue them. But we really need the banks to disclose all the proper information to the proper authorities, so that you can move in a quick way. You want to stop the bleeding of the funds once you find out, and then if there's prosecution to be made, you need all the information.
Bobby Sackman, thank you for raising awareness on the issue.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Still to come on the show, an international battle over the use of beauty products from Israel.
Before that, Abby Shula has some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic and community media. From Queens Latino, lawmakers say recently signed legislation from Mayor Bloomberg will help minority and women-owned businesses secure contracts with city agencies. But many Hispanic business leaders say it discriminates against Latinos. The bill, titled Intro 911A, was passed by City Council with a unanimous vote. The law is a revised version of Local Law 129 that passed in 2005. The bill sought to increase minority businesses from 700 to 3,500. But critics say the law would lower procurement goals for Hispanic-owned construction firms from 9% to 4% of city contracts. Also from the Latino community, Woodhaven, Queens has become a haven for a growing number of Latino residents. El Diario La Prensa reports that the area once populated by Irish and Italian residents is becoming home to mainly Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Ecuadorians, and Colombians. According to the 2000 census, out of over 140,000 residents in Woodhaven's district, the Latino population grew by over 35%, exceeding the number of whites by over 20%. The area has already begun to shape local Latino leaders, including Etienne Adorno, who ran for state assembly. The World Punjabi Organization recently launched its North America chapter at an event held in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Desi Talk reports that leaders at the event stressed the need for the organization to preserve the Punjabi culture. Punjab is a region located between Pakistan and India. The group is already planning activities to celebrate their traditional events and teach their children the significance of those occasions. A new beginning is in the works for a historic jazz club in Harlem that was forced to close down recently. Lenox Lounge shut its doors on December 31st due to a hike in rent after being at their location for 70 years. But the club has found a new home not far away on Lenox Avenue in the center of Harlem's new night scene. Lenox Lounge owner Alvin Reed told the Amsterdam News his customers and jazz singers encouraged him to keep the business going. Reed says they plan to make a few changes in their new home. They will continue as a jazz venue, but plan to add R&B performances as well. And finally, one writer says MTV's new reality show, Washington Heights, is good for the community. The new show is centered around 9 young Latinos living and working in the Uptown neighborhood. Some fear the show would be simply the Latino version of the Jersey Shore. That program is MTV's controversial reality show centered around a group of young, boisterous Italian Americans. But John Paul Infante of the Manhattan Times describes the cast as a group of charismatic and attractive Latinos with big dreams. Infante also says the show is a good reflection of the transitional era Washington Heights has been experiencing. Those were just a few stories from the ethnic and community media. Now back to Gary and Vianora.
Thanks, Abby. For the first time ever, while doing the show, I was completely stunned by a guest's response to our questions. I was supposed to conduct an interview with two guests about the coat pink boycott of cosmetics giant Ahava. But early in the conversation, one guest got so angry that she hung up mid-interview. We knew going in that it was a sensitive topic and wanted to get both sides of the story. On one hand, there's Coat Pink, a grassroots movement bent on getting consumers to boycott Ahava's products. On the other hand, Ahava, the company that advertised itself as being the only cosmetics brand indigenous to the Dead Sea.
Coat Pink claims that the minerals used in many of Ahava's products are pillaged from a Palestinian settlement on the West Bank and are illegal under international law. But the company denies these claims. This fight is only the proverbial tip of the iceberg because it represents just part of an international campaign to boycott products from Israel. The movement's leaders say it's an attempt to force Israel's hand to reach an accord with Palestine.
So now that we've set the scene, here's my interview with Coat Pink's founder, Nancy Krikorian, and Hindi Popko of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York City. Nancy, can you tell us about this Coat Pink movement?
Coat Pink Women for Peace is a women-initiated grassroots peace and social justice organization that was founded in November of 2002 in the lead-up to the Iraq War. The idea was to have a women's preemptive strike for peace, and clearly we were unable to prevent the Iraq War, and so we've been, for the past 10 years, working to end U.S. wars and occupations and redirect our nation's resources to more life-affirming activities.
Well, lately you've picked up another cause, which is to boycott Israeli products. Ahava, which is a cosmetic product.
Yeah, well, I would say, we had always, we consider Israel's occupation of the West Bank actually a U.S.-funded occupation. Our tax dollars, to the tune of over $3 billion a year, are going to subsidize this settlement enterprise and this occupation. So around Operation Cast Lead, which started in December of 2008, we decided we had to get more proactive, and we got involved in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement for Palestinian rights. And as a women's peace group, we tried to find a target that would make sense for our members. And we found this Israeli cosmetics company called Ahava. Its factory and visitor showroom are in an illegal settlement in the occupied West Bank, and they actually pillage occupied natural resources for use in their products, and they mislabel their products. If you look at the package, it says "product of Israel," when in fact they are manufactured in the occupied West Bank.
Hindi, you have a different take on the situation. Is it legitimate to boycott Israeli products?
So what I would say is that we find all forms of boycott extremely counterproductive, and I really like Nancy's...
You know what? I'm not doing this call. Bye.
Please finish your thought.
Sure, and I'm sorry that Nancy isn't here to join us in person or on the phone. What I was going to say is that we find all forms of boycott to be really counterproductive, and that, as Nancy said, life-affirming projects are really important, and we absolutely agree. And what we have found is that in order to build trust between the two parties, Israelis and Palestinians, the kind of work that's involved is trust building, getting the two parties to work together, try out what it would mean to live side by side. And campaigns like these boycott campaigns really only serve to heighten the tensions in the region and actually push the parties farther apart.
I mean, boycotts have worked in many parts of the world. South Africa comes to mind now. Iran is under serious sanctions. They do work, but why don't you think it will work in this case?
Sure. Well, I first think that it's really important for us not to compare conflicts. Every conflict is unique with its own set of circumstances. And I know that there is a tendency to employ lessons from the past for current situations, but I think the situation in the Middle East requires its own set of principles and understandings. And here what we're dealing with is a situation where two peoples each have the right to their own state. We very much believe in the two-state solution, a right for a Jewish state and a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and secure borders. In order to achieve that, if that is our goal, that is our goal. I can't speak for Nancy, but in order to achieve that goal, it's a process of getting the two parties to understand each other, to sit across from the table like you and I are, look each other in the eye, and figure out how we're going to make this work. And things like boycotts don't help to get the two parties to understand each other.
Well, what will help? I mean, this is a conflict that has confounded the brightest minds in the last 100 years or so. And listening to you, it sounds like it's real simple. All we have to do is sit down and talk. Why? I mean, we just had an incident here where the other guest just got so outraged, and you hadn't even finished your thought. So why is this so visceral? Why is it that we can't really even sit down and talk?
Right. So first, I couldn't agree with you more. I think this is one of the most complex situations out there, which is why the simplistic calls for the boycott of a cosmetics company is not the way to go.
Well, which way to go? What's the solution to your mind?
I believe that the solution is, number one, restarting negotiations as soon as possible. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it very clear, as recently as a few weeks ago, he said, meet me in New York. He said that to Abbas. He said, I'm here, I'm ready to sit down and talk. I'm not claiming that the talks are going to be easy or that the negotiations are going to go smoothly. But what I do know is that it's impossible to achieve a solution without even sitting down and talking about it. And all we're saying is that the two parties need to restart negotiations as soon as possible, which is the stance of the U.S. government and many governments around the world, that the path to peace is through direct negotiations, and those need to start immediately.
I was reading a couple articles about this boycott and how in some ways it has backfired, where a lot of Jewish organizations went and just bought out stores, stocks, and talk a little bit about that, how you guys are mobilizing to counter this boycott.
Sure. So exactly what you mentioned, what often happens is when a boycott like this is called, which many people view as pretty comical in nature, there will be a counter boycott. Where groups who believe that this whole thing is preposterous will actually go out and buy all of the Ahava products in a given store. And if you look at, and I'm not a spokesperson for Ahava, but I did some research because it was interesting to see their sales have actually grown in the double digits in the United States. I don't think that has anything to do with the boycott. I mean, we're talking about a few isolated stores. But I think what it does do, what is really detrimental, putting the commercial aspect aside, is that it frames the conflict in simplistic terms, just as you said, and it makes it seem like only Israel is to blame, as opposed to understanding and recognizing the true reality, which is it's complicated on both sides, and both sides will need to do the difficult work of making concessions for peace, of nation building inside their own communities to prepare their people for the eventuality, hopefully, of a two-state solution and what that will look like.
Thanks, Handy. We had hoped to have a discussion on both sides, but unfortunately our other guest left us abruptly. Handy Popko, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
When we come back, a taste of halal in Harlem. And finally from us tonight, we bring you the first in a series where we feature the growing variety of ethnic food that can be sampled from food trucks on various city streets.
We'll start tonight in Harlem, where one Egyptian food vendor is introducing many City College students to halal food. These are meals that have been prepared according to strict Islamic religious codes.
Judith Escalona produced this report.
My name is Mohammed. I'm from Egypt. We serve like Middle East food. It's like chicken over rice or lamb or mix. I have falafel, burger, Philly cheesesteak, and the breakfast stuff. The coffee, the donut, sandwich, egg cheese. The breakfast, it's American food. We do both in here.
I got a bacon, egg, and cheese.
Halal, it's a food for Muslim people.
Lamb over yellow rice.
Everybody can eat it, yeah, because it is good food, you know. It is not heavy, it is good and tasty.
Yeah, I love it.
I hope one day I have my own business, but my own truck.
My name is Salah Muhammad Hussein. I've been work like halal food like one year and 2 months.
That's how I make the coffee.
Muhammad taught me, because he been here before me like 2 years. He learned it, and he taught me. When I work like this, I spend like 12 hours a day or 15. He's my cousin and my friend too. Yeah, we been in the school same year, same age, me and him. I wish to stay here and study too, because I got college degree to teach math. I want to save money, because when I went to school, I want to go to school, I have money with me.
Thanks. You're welcome.
I like being here, but a lot of people nice in here. The most of the people here are nice.
Yeah, good spot and good people and good customer too. When you be beside the college, the people is so nice too.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned.
Till next time, be independent-minded.